Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Tuesday, September 7th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We're talking Royals today with beat writer Lynn Worthy and columnist Sam Mellinger, and with you. On the list of topics, what should the Royals' objectives be for the remainder of the season? How should they use Adalberto Mondesi now that he's back? And why do baseball metrics and national media seem to hate Salvador Perez? Well, we're only half kidding on that one, but some advanced metrics make little sense to me. Hey, this show started as a SportsBeat Live, so let's get going, talking Royals baseball. Hey, good morning from Kansas City, and welcome to SportsBeat Live. It's our weekly dive into Royals baseball with the Star folks who know them best, and with you. Please send us your questions and comments and talk Royals with us. Before we get started, a big thanks to our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. You will hear from them later in the show. I hope everybody had a great Labor Day weekend. It's always a busy weekend in sports, but I'm hoping that our guys here, Lynn Worthy and Sam Mellinger, had a few hours to enjoy themselves over Labor Day. Sam, any grilling at the Mellinger Estates this weekend?
Yeah, as it happens, it was the neighborhood barbecue on Saturday. So, first place ribs, no big deal. Okay. And what was the secret that took it to the top? Just do what I do. I'm just trying to be the best me that I can be.
Good to hear. And Lynn, I know your Labor Day weekend was filled with baseball, covering baseball again. Labor Day weekend is busy for everybody. I did like having an afternoon game on Monday. So because it was in Baltimore, early start for the Royals on Monday, beating the Baltimore Orioles in what I think is a very kind of a typical Royals game. When the Royals are good, and they have been good in the last decade or so, they've done it with, enough starting pitching, a good bullpen, and good outfield defense. And speaking of outfield defense, here's where the game turned on Monday.
2 blown lead losses. Left field, Benintendi is there. Woo! And that is knowing this ballpark. Having played so many games in Baltimore as a member of the Red Sox, you could tell he knew exactly where he was and what he needed to do.
Oh, and thankfully he was able to drift and glide towards center field on that wall. I think that hits the top of the wall and goes over. Might have saved the game right here. Look at his route. Looks once. Knows where he is. And that robbed a homer. Oh, fantastic highlight catch. Benny, way to go. Scotty Barlow says, woo!
I think Scotty Barlow may have said more than woo, but anyway, that kept the score 3-2, and that was the final. So good day all around for the Royals. Really good day for Andrew Benintendi, who's been swinging a good bat here lately. Lynn, what about yesterday's W? They're playing a team that's I don't know if it's the worst record in baseball, but certainly at the bottom. A team that had lost 19 in a row, just a little, ended that streak just a little while ago, but went to New York and took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees. It's and they've got 3 more with Baltimore here the rest of the week.
Yep, and almost as importantly, the game was played in the timely fashion that allowed me to get to my fantasy football draft. So we always like that. I didn't have any grilling going on, but we had some numbers crunching. But yeah, in Baltimore, a team that took 2 out of 3 in Kansas City. I think it was 2 out of 3 in Kansas City right after the All-Star break. I know they won the series. I'm forgetting exactly what the numbers were, but a series that featured the Royals losing in games that were started by Matt Harvey and Jorge Lopez by Baltimore. So yeah, I remember that was the source of some angst for Royals fans at the time coming out of the break. But it brings me back to I think it was on Sunday, Sal Perez talking about I asked about them playing well against Chicago because last year that was a big thing in the shortened season. They went 1-9 against Chicago, and if they just played 500 against Chicago, they would have been 500 in the shortened season, and they felt like they just didn't play well against Chicago in any of those games. And Sal's answer was, it doesn't matter who the team is. It's about them playing at a consistent level and playing well and playing the way they should every day. And he said even, after that series, coming out playing the same way in the next series, that obviously being this one against Baltimore. So, yeah, it was, I guess, encouraging in that they didn't play particularly well for, the first 7 innings. And then they, put together a rally to take the lead in the 8th and hold on for the win.
Yeah. So, and with Sunday's win, the Royals took the season series from the White Sox, right? 10 out of 19, and of course this year's last year's White Sox or this year's Cleveland Indians. They cannot beat Cleveland. So next year it'll be the Twins or the Tigers, I guess, that they'll stumble against all season. But that is kind of encouraging, isn't it, Sam? That the Royals the Royals trot the record out every time they play a first place team. They have more wins against first place teams than anybody in baseball this year. But that means a couple things. First, it means the Royals aren't in first place because teams that are in first place don't get to play themselves. But the Royals are, I think it's 20 wins against first place teams, with half of them coming against the White Sox. So not a bad stat.
I think it's really encouraging. And the thing, I get what Sal's saying about, it depends more on how the Royals are playing. That should be his focus. It is his focus. But last year, it looked like the White Sox and Royals were just playing different sports. It was just, oh my God, like the Royals just weren't even close. And, to have that turnaround in a year, I think it is important. Now, what Sal said is also correct, because the problem with the Royals, they would be sort of within, looking distance or whatever of a playoff spot right now if they just didn't have so many losing streaks, like lose 3 in a row and then win the 4th, and the season I think would feel a lot differently. So, it's the story of the Royals in so many ways, right? Like, I think they are making progress, and I think that it matters that, they have, at least according to, I think it was Baseball America, the 3rd best farm system. And I think it matters that Daniel Lynch has performed the way that he has, after that disastrous start. And Carlos Hernandez, I think all this stuff matters. And I actually think I don't know if I'm just being naive or whatever, but I think they've put themselves in really good position for next season.
And in Lynch, who really didn't throw well his last game, right, ended up with a blister, and Hernandez, maybe they've got the type of starters that you could roll out to prevent that, 7 to 11 game losing streak that has just crushed this team over the last few years.
And they've got multiple, they're starting to get, I don't want to say that they've got depth, but they're starting to get to the point where you have, enough guys where it's not okay. You got 1 or 2 guys, and then you're waiting to see what happens with the others. Like that, now you've got at least a number of guys. You say, okay, you feel somewhat comfortable pulling from this group and trying to get 5. You still want more. You always want more. I think we're a couple of us were having a conversation in the press box this week or this weekend, and somebody said something about, what are they going to do with this guy and that guy? I was like, it's baseball. Like it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, but they got like 7 guys. Like, no. It looks like they got 7 guys, but no. There's always at the beginning of the season, or they got too many. No, never been a season where you've had too many. So, but they're at least getting to the point now where because you think about right now, Brad Keller's, on the IL. Probably not going to see him again this season. He's not part of this group that you're watching right now. And they've been going with, a 6-man rotation. So, there's at least some numbers there that are encouraging as far as the number of starting pitchers. When you think back to the pandemic season where, they started off that season where you had multiple bullpen games the first time around the rotation. So, yeah, there's some progress there.
It is wild. There was a point this season, just what was it, a couple months ago, Lynn? They basically had a 3-man rotation, and now they've got a surplus. I mean, that Orioles series that you were just referencing, that may have been, and I understand all the losing streaks, so maybe this is not true, but that may have been the low point of the season. Losing a series to that team, and then coming out of the All-Star break and being TBA on a starter for like the Saturday or Sunday game. It was just like, God, what a mess, And then, the stuff changes pretty quick. So, but you're right. Like, no team has ever had too many starting pitchers, like ever. Like, that has never happened in the history of baseball. And the Royals aren't going to be the first, because those guys break. They get demoted, whatever. If you've got 7, maybe you won 8,
Well, one of the encouraging signs recently was the performance of Jackson Kowar in one of the Cleveland games, right? And I think we had just finished talking last week when the Royals expanded the roster to include Kowar and Adalberto Mondesi. So Kowar, at least in his first appearance in the second part of his major league debut season, threw a 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, left the game with a 3-2 lead, and the Royals couldn't hold it because they were, of course, playing Cleveland, and that's just they do not beat Cleveland this year. But anyway, it looks like at least for one game, and I think he throws tonight, if I'm not mistaken. Kowar is, at least for one game, followed the Daniel Lynch path back to the major leagues, didn't he, Lynn?
Yeah, in terms of just having a lot better performance, and it's interesting to me because Lynch, you could point to the tipping pitches and say, okay, well, this is what his major issue was, and he still had like that first start. He got a couple, I think, 4 innings into his very first start, but then the other 2, the pitching tipping pitches was the more the issue. But Kowar, it seemed like, just never got comfortable, never settled in. He had, I think he had 3 appearances the first time he was up. One of them was in relief, and I think the relief one was the longest one. And he had a total of, I want to say, 5 innings pitched in 3 appearances, 2 of them starts. And it wasn't necessarily like, oh, well, they know what's coming. It was like, no, it's not going well. Like it was, he couldn't command, and then he was leaving balls all over the middle that were getting hit hard. And then it was just like, they tried to put him in the pen. He had 1 inning. I remember he had like a 1, 2, 3 inning, or he had 1 solid inning out of the pen. They brought him out for a second inning. Then it was like, yeah, that went a little sideways. So it was different from Lynch, in that Lynch, you knew what was going on, and you say, okay, well, they got to fix this. And with, Kowar, it was just like, is this too much for him right now? Because it looked like it at points. And then you see him come back, and it's like, okay, well, this is what everybody was talking about, and why everybody was like, after the first time he struggled, you start saying, well, was he just not ready? And people point to his performance before and say, well, how much more ready do you get? This is what they were talking about.
I remember a start in Oakland for Kowar where he just couldn't get an out. I mean, it was terrible. And all the highlights you'd seen of him in Omaha was, he just did a great job keeping the ball down, and he gets to the major leagues and he can't locate his fastball. And you wonder, how did it change so much from AAA to the majors, just in terms of location? I mean, the mound size is the same. Why can't he keep the ball down in the majors? For whatever reason, it just wasn't working for him. Royals sent him back, and again, just 1 game's worth of evidence, but a good outing for him, and he goes. I believe it is tonight against the Orioles. So here's hoping that we see more success from Jackson Kowar. And listen, the Royals, since the All-Star break, including that 2 out of 3 gaff against the Orioles at Kauffman coming out of the break, the Royals are 26-22 since the All-Star break, and I don't know where that ranks in the majors, but upper half, right? It's got to be, and I would love to see him finish with a better than 500 record throughout the rest of the way from in the post All-Star break part of the season. I'd like to see him finish 500 or better at home. They're one game under 500 at home this year, but that's not what the rest of the year needs to be about, is it? I mean, to me right now, it's all about, well, there's some nice totals to be had by Salvador Perez and others, but it's about the development of the young pitching, right? With Bubic and Singer and Kowar and Lynch, it really is about getting these guys more comfortable and going into 2022 with a little bit of confidence and some momentum. Am I right, Sam?
Yeah, I think the scores do matter a little bit more, just because I don't care whether they win 70 games this season or 76 or whatever. But I think the scores matter just in terms of confidence. And because I think that Mike Matheny has kind of like hinted at this a few different ways and a few different times. Like there's times where they can say what they want, but there's times that it doesn't seem like they're confident. And I think that that's kind of where some of the losing streaks happen. I think that you see it more in the beginning of the season, which is a positive sign that you don't see it as much anymore. But when the other pitcher is shoving, it's hard for the Royals to get that guy off track. I just think stuff like that matters if you're going into a season, which maybe I'm being naive, but I think it's spring training, opening day next season. I think this team is going to be sort of where a lot of people thought the team was before this season. I think they're going to have a legit chance, expectation, whatever, of playing meaningful baseball games all throughout the season. Health, all that stuff you don't know, but and I think that August and September can be sort of a platform or a jumping off point, I should say, to maybe get that way next season.
So, Lynn, you were asked a question from Cody on Twitter about when was the last time a major league third baseman stole 60 bases in a year? And the obvious reference is to Adalberto Mondesi, who in his first game back hits a home run and has stolen a couple of bags and has looked like, a man among boys when he's on the base paths. Twice I've seen him steal third base and he stops after he starts. And I don't know what's going on with that hesitation, but then he goes in standing up. So he's the freak that we remember him being. And are we there with him as a third baseman? Are the Royals there with him as a third baseman, Lynn?
For the rest of this season, that's where they are. Going forward, it remains to be seen. And the Royals haven't wanted to really talk about potentially, anywhere else. They just said, okay, third base, stay on that same side of the infield, do this for now. Let Nicky stay at short because he's had such a good season. They feel like he's, earned that right and that he is in the mix for a Gold Glove. So they didn't want to shake things up. Him and Witt are playing so well together. But going forward, still remains to be seen. I know shortstop is a position that they would like to have an everyday type person. And we've talked about it before. Dayton was pretty clear. They're not going to count on Mondesi to be that guy. And I think what we're seeing right now with the regular off days, like that's going to continue. I said that, weeks ago when Dayton came out and talked about Mondesi, you can't count on him for 100+ games every season. And at that point, it was pretty clear they were talking about some sort of a load management thing. That wasn't just for the rest of the season. I think that's going to be a thing going forward, at least for a while, for Mondesi. And so he didn't hop on the Zoom after that first game where he hit the home run, but he was out there on the field one of the days last week, and a couple of us talked to him like, we didn't even really, it wasn't a formal type thing. He just stopped and talked to us. And he sounded like he was actually looking forward to the third base thing. Like we were wondering, move off shortstop. And now this was for a short period of time too, so who knows? But he talked about how he was looking forward to trying something different. When somebody asked about, potentially would he be open to the outfield, he said, yeah, he probably want to do it in the off season and get some time. But yeah, he wouldn't just like reject that out of hand. And even on the stolen base thing, it was funny. He said, yeah, I think he got almost too good of a jump because he was talking about, he thought that the guy still had a chance to throw over. That's why he stopped. it's like he realized that the guy could still throw over, like at that point when he started to break, and that's what the stop was. It wasn't like he was just trying to mess with guys. It was, I think he almost got too good of a jump. So, but for the rest of this season, I think this is what we're going to see. But going forward, it's still yet to be determined. But the off days I think, are going to be here for a while.
I'd be surprised if they don't try him in the outfield. I'd be surprised if that's not part of the exit interview after this season about, hey, when you're working out or whatever, just do some shagging or, just, get used to that. It just gives them more flexibility and, it gives him other options to get on the field. And I also believe, and maybe this would be true just with third base, but the precedent is there, and maybe it's just too convenient or whatever, but Alex Gordon stunk as a third baseman. And then they put him in left field, and he was the best left fielder in baseball over a span of about 5 years. And I think that there was some mental just sort of unlocking and relaxation there. And I don't think that Gordon and Mondesi are the same mentally. I think Gordon's kind of a white knuckle guy, like he's very intense and failure really eats at him. I think Mondesi has more of that ball player, sort of what you want, right? Of a little bit more easygoing. But I also think that Mondesi feels a lot of pressure, in other ways personally. So, maybe that can be, an aid to him as well. It's a really good plan what they have. I think that if you can get away from, you've got to grieve the idea of Mondesi as the 150 games a year shortstop. Like that's just not going to happen. And once you get past that, you see that the Royals have two guys that can play a really good big league shortstop, even still. And they can move Mondesi around, to fill some gaps and injuries and slumps and all that. I think it's a really good plan going forward, but I do expect at least corner outfield and maybe even center field, to be on the table for him next year.
Okay, and by the way, Cody asked a question about 60 bags in a year. I looked it up before we went on the air. The record for career stolen bases by a third baseman is 231 by Howard Johnson of the Mets. Hojo. So I think Mondesi, if he's a third baseman in the future, will destroy that in about 3 or 4 seasons. So. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back, Sam's going to tell us why the metrics and the national media hate Salvador Perez.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners: unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. All right, we're back with Sam Mellinger and Lynn Worthy talking Royals on SportsBeat Live. And okay, so we've talked about the Royals' 3-2 victory over the Orioles on Monday afternoon, a game in which Salvador Perez drove in his 103rd run of the season. That RBI total, I think, is tops or matches the best in at least the American League right now. And his 41 home runs are right there, second to Shohei Ohtani. He threw out a would-be base stealer yesterday, so I don't know what else Salvador Perez could have done to help the Royals win the game. And yet, his WAR, his wins above replacement, if he adds 1 point to it the rest of the season, will have the 18th or 19th best WAR for a season by a Royals player, on his way to having an epic year. So what is it about the metrics, Sam, that don't seem to agree with Salvador Perez?
Well, on base is one, but also they don't like his defense, and I think I should say, like, the defensive metrics for first basemen and catchers, I think, are kind of garbage. Like, it's those are different positions. I think at first base, I don't think they do a good job of taking into account, like, saving throwing errors by teammates. Right. Which I think is critically important for a first baseman, and catcher. There's just so much involved, and I think those numbers don't really. I don't know that I buy into him all that much. The numbers hate him as a framer. I think that's certainly a big part of it, and I do believe that. I think that's a measurable thing, and the Royals are aware of it, and they say it's because he's big. The umpire doesn't get a good view of it or whatever, but that's what it is. It's on base, and they don't like his defense. But I just think, I love numbers. Those stats, I think you can learn a lot and, unlock a lot, of learning about the game and all that. But I do think there's a time and place to, just sort of see the game and see what happens and watch how a guy changes a game and, is with his teammates and all that stuff. And by that metric, I think Salvador Perez has a heck of a case to be second, as high as second in the MVP vote. Nobody's getting first except for Ohtani. But, after that, I think he's got as good a case as anybody. And there's some damn good seasons. Vlad Guerrero and the kid in Baltimore is having a great season too, Mullins. There's some really, really great individual seasons. But I think Salvador Perez has a case to be, second among all of them.
On base percentage, the guy walked yesterday, number 22 for the season, matching a career high.
What more do you want from him, man?
I know. What do you think, Lynn? What is it about Salvador's game that that just doesn't add up in the metrics department?
As Sam mentioned, the pitch framing, I think, is the big one, because his defensively for catchers, he ranks way down there. I think actually Cam Gallagher is like one of the better ones in the majors. I think he's last I checked, I think he was like a top 10 as far as pitch framing, and Sal was way down towards the bottom of that list. I don't think, like Sam said, I don't think there's things that aren't taking into consideration with defensively, blocking balls in the dirt, which I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, but I know at one point Salvy had more blocks, like hundreds more blocks than the next closest person. Obviously his ability to throw out runners, picking guys off. We saw him with a walk-off, pick-off this season. So those types of things, there's not the analytics don't really capture those quite as well. It's funny too, because I was trying to, I can't remember where it was, so I can't exactly find it. But I know Baseball America, I think within the last couple of weeks, did one of those things where they surveyed baseball people. And I can't remember if it was managers or GMs, but the top defensive catchers, I think in the American League, Sal was voted either second or third amongst the baseball people, whereas the metrics say he's behind backup catchers and stuff like that. So I just couldn't find it quick enough. But I know I had retweeted it, but they had one of those surveys in the American League. I think it was Salvy. I think it might have been Salvy, Maldonado, and maybe Cleveland, Roberto Perez, I think, were the three in the American League. But metrics are going to say what the metrics say. That's where the old Whit Merrifield, when those numbers say I can't hit a slider, then I'll care about them.
That's right. And speaking of Whit, that same survey had Whit as the best base runner in the American League, as I recall as well. So, all right, Sam, and I got this from your Mellinger Minutes. National media apparently hates Salvador Perez, or at least ignores him anyway. I think we're maybe a little sensitive in this part of the country to what the national media thinks of us in Kansas City, our teams. I kind of like it, to be honest with you. I agree with your response. I kind of like it when the national media, when we think, they treat us like the flyover country that we are. But
I'm us.
Right. We don't need ESPN here every day, talking about Mahomes or Salvy or whatever. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I want to have a conversation sometime with, people who have our jobs in, Minneapolis or Milwaukee or Cincinnati or whatever. And just like, is it like that here, there? Do people, it seems to me that people here care deeply and passionately and will no matter what, will think that the national media is ignoring their teams. And then once Patrick Mahomes becomes the quarterback and national media is always talking about him, like it's just not positive enough. Now it's like, why do you hate Patrick Mahomes? Because you said that he was like the best quarterback. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But I think that there's a couple things with Sal. Look, first of all, MLB Network does segments on Salvy, ESPN, like they're talking about him. But look, it's just a fact of life that if you play for the Yankees, Dodgers, Cubs, Red Sox, I mean, we know the teams, you're going to get, more attention. Also, the Royals are in fourth place. That doesn't demand a lot of attention. So I think that people are, and I think we're going to see it in the MVP voting. I really do. I think people recognize how good of a player he is. But if you're in a small market and the team's not winning, I don't think that that's just the way that the world works. I mean, the home run derby thing was ridiculous. I mean, that was a Saturday Night Live skit.
I was waiting to drop in a Peter Alonso reference. I was waiting for it.
That was just, laughable. That an SNL skit about, a small market team being ignored would look exactly like that. Like they wouldn't change a line, so that was just patently absurd. But, for the most part, I mean, look, if the Royals, like I believe they are, if the Royals are going to start winning in the next few years or whatever, they'll get their attention, and Salvy will be everybody's favorite.
Yeah, I don't remember a lack of attention in 14 and 15 for
That's right.
For the Royals. So, all right, guys, great conversation. It was terrific to have Lynn Worthy, Sam Mellinger here. Vahe Gregorian will be back next week. He is, as we say in the business, on assignment. And Beth Welsh, our producer, thank you so much. Thanks to the University of Kansas Health System. We'll do this again next week, 10 a.m. on Tuesday, talking Royals with you. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Lynn Worthy and Sam Mellinger for stopping by and talking Royals. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, got another deal for you. You can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. Sports Pass is the online version of the Star Sports section. You get all the stories that appear in the print editions of the Star, plus additional stories that appear only on the website. And of course, they're posted first on kansascity.com. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. And it's a great time to subscribe. Read about what's going on with the Chiefs, who open the regular season on Sunday against the Browns, the Royals, the colleges, the soccer teams, and more. How do you get it? Go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. And I wanted to call your attention to something else new. Maybe you know about the Stars e-edition. That's a replica of the printed newspaper on your screen that comes with your digital subscription. Now there's an updated sports section produced separately that goes along with it. When you open the e-edition, there's a box in the upper right-hand corner. Click on that and you can access a sports page that includes all the evening news like the Royals and baseball games. I call it the Worthy edition of the Star because it's worth your time and effort, and because Lynn Worthy supplies about half of its content with his Royals reporting. Hey, however you get the Star, I want to thank you because you're supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode.